To Overseer Al-Relan. Overseer, it is with tremendous disappointment that I pass along these notes written by the hand of the heretic Al-Firim. Though members of the expedition have long referred to him as the Mad Scribe, none of us suspected that his eccentricities concealed unlawful beliefs. If he had, he would have been replaced immediately. As you requested, I've not shared these writings with other members of the cartel. There is no need for them to be burdened by the depths of Al-Firim's delusions. Our mission remains focused on following the path of the First Ones and securing their secrets. It shall be seen whether the information leading to the sepulchre proves to be on a tangible value. But we will, of course, be diligent in our investigation. Al-Firim's replacement has already proposed an alternate method of translation that she ensures me will yield favorable results, and I'm confident our venture will yet prove profitable. Considering that the secrecy of our mission demands our work to be conducted at a slow, careful pace, progress is encouraging. The defense matrix encoded into the artifacts we've discovered remains our primary obstacle. I'm pleased that no additional losses have been incurred since the last reported incident, which I still insist could have been avoided if Al-Firim had focused on his work on disabling the defenses instead of trying to justify his delusions. Unfortunately, no further evidence has been found as to the whereabouts of the criminal himself, nor those who made the unwise decision to join his doomed expedition. Let us hope that our operatives in Oribos find a solid lead that allows justice to be done. Yours in faithful service, Executor Al-Hattar. So this is the incident report to Cartel Al of the brokers. This is the first report, the foreword. I have no means to convey the tenure of my labor upon this request, for how can time be measured in search of such a place? Surely, the sepulchre of the First Ones exists beyond any measure that one such as I could hope to comprehend. And I possess far more knowledge of these matters than most. Forgive me, their mockery has made me bitter. I must remind myself to ignore the petty envies of my lessers, so this is being written by Firim. And yet, here, so close to achieving our goals, I faltered. Yes, I admit for the first time I faced a challenge so daunting that I doubted my ability to overcome it. Al-Firim the Fallible, they snickered in ill-concealed whispers. But who among them fared better? None, I assure you. The complexity of the glyphs alone was, well, let me say it felt like an eternity passed before I grasped the first inkling of what they represented. Probably how it should work, considering you're in the realm of the dead. Probably should take an eternity to understand what they mean. The others came and went. They brought in helpers and apprentices they claimed would aid me. None lasted. None proved worthy. They tried to tell me I should stop, that they had found another to take up the work, but I refused to leave. I knew who it was they planned to send, and I had vowed that Venari would never again usurp my position. I was lost in the glyphs, the geometry. Every path seemed to curve in upon itself. Nothing made sense, until it did. When at last the realization struck me, I swear to you that reality itself seemed to melt away. I saw visions of the unimaginable, sights I could never hope to convey in mere words. When I became conscious of my surroundings again, I saw the others staring down, mocking my sprawled limbs. It didn't matter. I had found the truth at last. Understand, despite this being the most wondrous revelation of my storied career, and I stand upon the merest precipice of understanding. The language of the First One seems to shift and grow as I find greater depths within it. Remember how I started the stream talking about how fractals exist within language? I have no doubt that further meanings will reveal themselves as the glyphs and geometry of this fractal tongue become more known to me. So please consider the chapters ahead to be but works in progress. It is not that there is a chance they will change, there is certainty of it. Enough preamble. Read now the greatest discovery of our time. The certainty of change. This is so good. This, like, honestly, this kind of, like, reminds me of me. Anytime I put on a fucking video, please consider the chapters ahead to be works in progress. It is not that there is a chance they will change, there is certainty of it. Enough preamble. Read now the greatest discovery of our time. To the next one. Part 1. Content: the dawn of all things. It is no small irony that the first specimens of their language remain the most inscrutable. Perhaps that is what hindered my progress for so long. Regardless, the particulars are beyond my present ability to decipher. With time, I am certain I will succeed, but not yet. There are references to forces so primal that we have no frame of reference for them. Roiling and churning, or measured and deliberate? The words here have multiple meanings. I must set them aside for now. And I think that this is referring to the idea that creation is, is chaos, it's life, it's light. That's what this is talking about. Things so old that we don't have a frame of reference. They haven't been ordered into our mind at this point. So how does one perceive creation? Roiling and churning, or measured and deliberate? The words here have multiple meanings. I must set them aside for now. What is clear is that great powers took shape. How many? There are numbers within numbers, my friends. At first, I thought only 2. Until I perceived an infinite array. Oh, the terror of it. But as of late, I have settled on 6. Possibly 7. But the last might be an artifact of the geometry. Fractal. I will tell you what I know. These forces existed in strife. Well, not strife in the way one such as you or I would see it. Opposition, surely, but whether malignant or benign is unclear. There was imbalance, until there was a need for something more. They came together, or were brought together, depending on how one interprets the fractal, and gave form to their design. Forged, scribed, shaped. The exact word is elusive. Each architect gave a portion of themselves, and thus the pattern was drawn. It is from here that the language becomes clearer. With a framework in place, all that we now comprehend came to be. As if reality were nothing more than a fungus growing upon the frame. 6 forces now in balance, and from their intersections arose others. A simple structure growing infinitely more complex. Now do you understand why my translations took such time? Why they still elude me? It grows. It changes. Glyphs and geometry and fractals everywhere. Forgive me. As each emptiness abated and grew fuller, the pattern alone was not enough. Shapes arose within shapes, begotten by the 6 to beget more. Now it grows clearer, more certain, each layer more fathomable to a meager mind such as yours. 6 realms, many intersections, countless fractals. In balance? Possibly, but that might be wrong. If 6 equal 1, then what is the other? The one outside the pattern. Note, I must return to this chapter later to afford greater clarity. It is possible I possess a propensity to ramble. The known. Before delving deeper into the great mysteries, it is worth framing their wonder within the context of our own existence. What we know of it, at least. It fills me with sorrow that of the many beings I encountered on my travels through the Nimbus, so few possessed any interest beyond their sense of duty. I sought out scholars, philosophers, explorers. I found only simpletons and servitors. This journey took ages, and many times along the way felt fruitless. If only I had known of the existence of the sepulchre. But of course I would not learn of its wonders until much later, and so I plodded along the only way I could. I came close to finding wisdom on occasion, joining a trade expedition to the Bastion. I met an amenable aspirant who took me to a great archive of knowledge. Countless records of souls the Kyrians carried across from the mortal realm, as well as collections of their long-shed memories. The aspirant was even willing to bring me to this repository, until a nosy steward alerted one of the Ascended. My expedition was escorted back to the Anima Gate, warned never to return. Some ages later, I secured an invitation to a tournament in the arena of Maldraxxus. While my companions reveled in the sport, I made my way to an ancient library nestled between the great houses. They called it the Sepulchre, but I assure you it was not the one we seek. I remember this quest. I remember meeting Firim and going inside of the Sepulchre, freaking out like, wait a second, what is going on? The horrors I encountered on my journey there still haunt me to this day, but so fixed was I upon my goal that I braved nightmarish constructs and rivulets of toxic plague. You're so full of shit. I did that for you. When I arrived, the liches agreed to tolerate my presence for a time, so I sought out their most ancient texts. Oh, this is before the hero arrived. Texts for any history I could glean. Oh, I found histories of great battles fought against the outer planes, the rise and fall of legendary combatants, of mighty weapons forged and lost. When I asked if there were any older tomes, the implacable liches told me those tomes were for the eyes of the Primus alone, and I was commanded to leave at once. Kinda spooky. The Primus has access to all this information, but nobody else. It was not until I arrived in Oribos that I at last found others who shared my curiosity. Among the Arbiter's attendants was a knowledgeable sort named Kasher, who had seen many ages pass through the course of his duties. Though he was as blindly obeisant to his mistress as the rest of his kind, I admit that standing within the grandeur of the fabled Eternal City, I could understand his devotion. Kasher enjoyed conversing with me, sharing all that he had seen and knowledge that had been passed down by his predecessors. Yet within all his words, and in all the rituals of service he allowed me to observe, I found little of true value. The city had stood forever, he said. The Arbiter was ever wise and just, he said. Ours was not to question those from beyond the veil, but to facilitate their journeys, he said. It was when Kasher let slip that he had shared similar conversations with an old rival of mine. I vowed she would never thwart me again, he's talking about Venari, that I knew this was a pointless course. I left Kasher to do his blathering. Part 3. Ramblings of a Lunatic. Read no further. 100 Eyes of Eric II. It was upon storming out of the attendant's presence that I stumbled upon a true find. There, passing through Oribos on their way to another destination, I encountered a transcendent soul. They held a form I did not recognize, for they assumed a shape resembling the one they had held in the mortal plane. I begged them to speak with me. They agreed. They said their name was Eric II, and though I asked thrice where they had come from, the name of their home was one I could barely understand, let alone repeat or inscribe. It appeared Eric II spoke with 4 tongues, and in concert with the clicking of their many legs. I did at times have trouble catching every detail. Eric II claimed the place beyond the veil was populated by countless worlds, many inhabited by all manner of beings very different from their own people. When I asked if this world of theirs was rich with anima, Eric II assumed an expression I took to be puzzlement. Though the 100 Eyes of Eric II were admittedly difficult to read, the living did not trade in anima, they said, a phrase I asked them to repeat several times to be certain I heard it correctly. no anima? How? Could their existence truly be so different from our own? It was, indeed, Eric too assured me. They told me of this realm of mortals where their animalist existence ceased with the terminus of their fragile forms. Eric too met their end in a terrible war, they claimed, their home ravaged by the demons of the twisting nether. I nodded in solemn camaraderie, for we all recall the tale of the Burning Legion's assault on Maldraxxus and the terrible cost of the Necrolord's victory. Eric too brightened when they recalled the Arbiter's kindness in sending them along the streams to a hive where others of their kind shared a long and pleasant coexistence. After many ages caring for their kin, Eric too was ready to venture on, returning to Oribos to marvel at its splendor. Of course, I asked Eric too what they knew of the origin of the realm of mortals. What they told me made little sense. Does every mortal believe a different tale of fancy? I nodded as they spoke of their thousand-legged god, whose eggs brought forth all existence. But soon I grew tired of their quaint fables and bid Eric too good journeys. So it seemed, even the halls of Oribos could not grant me the truths I sought. Mortal souls believed in a myriad of truths that spoke of false gods, while we basked in the splendor of beings of true might. We were blessed to be in the presence of the Arbiter, the Archon, the Winter Queen, the Sire, and the Primus. Until I found a deeper truth on my way to the Sepulchre, and my mind splintered at the fractals. The nature of the six, possibly seven, possibly infinite. The nature of the six, possibly seven, possibly infinite. Among the superstitions conveyed to me by Eric too, superstitions I, of course, dismissed as the fanciful mythos of an uncivilized culture, one lingered in my mind. For you see, it takes a truly exceptional intellect to transcend what one is taught and retaught by so-called scholars open only to a narrow possibility. Eric too spoke of 1,000 truths, which I, at first, took as a sign of scattered indecision. But the key to interpreting the writings of the first ones lay in setting aside what I had believed and accepting a greater reality beyond it. Suddenly, I perceived the pattern and its fractals not as one truth, but layers of intersecting truths. Different levels to it, different things that have happened that line up to make the grand fucking narrative that we've seen. Just as we, from our first moment of consciousness, know that death is the foundation of all existence, so there are beings whose nature is fundamentally different from our own. Imagine then, based upon the truths I have told you, that each of these rival forces could, and I stress could, for the fractals may yet reveal another plan, be embodied by a host of transcendent beings as powerful as our own eternal ones. I have but scratched the barest surface of the truths that point me ever closer to the Sepulchre, and I will devote my every moment to discovering its location. This is to say, and I want to make this very clear, that there is a possibility for the fractals may yet reveal another path, that each rival cosmic force is not necessarily embodied by a host of transcendent beings as powerful as the eternal ones. The very idea that every cosmic force is ruled by a pantheon is one brought into question by the guy who proposed it himself. So when you get the community going, oh, there's a pantheon for every force. Did any of these people fucking read what Firim wrote? It literally says each of these rival forces could, and I stress could, for the fractals may yet reveal another path, be embodied by a host of transcendent beings as powerful as our own eternal ones. This is what happens when people don't actually fucking read, and they just take hearsay and turn it into speculation. Because now everyone thinks that there's a fucking pantheon for every cosmic force, and there isn't necessarily one. It's a possibility, for the fractals may yet reveal another path. This is why I've been trying to say to you, the idea that everything is represented by a pantheon is a stupid idea. Because a pantheon is a construct of order. It's something created out of a pursuit of order. I but scratch the barest surface of the truths that point me ever closer to the sepulchre, and I will devote my every moment to discovering its location. A few final questions for your consideration, good reader. What if, again, this still is purely speculative, the mortal plane is not some distant corner of reality that the first ones created to supply us with souls and anima? What if it is the very nexus of existence, where death is but one of many great powers that hold sway? If true, what would this say of mortal souls and their potential? He's implying that mortal souls are linked to the very nexus of existence, and that mortal souls hold a lot of potential. This feeds into what I've been saying to you guys about us being children of Azeroth, and how our mortality and choice, our free will, is like the big key in the World of Warcraft storyline. The mortals have the capacity to fight back against something that wants to control them to a greater extent than maybe anything else in the cosmos. And that is because, to an extent, mortals are kind of something that's made from the clashing and in a sense, balance of all of the different forces. And if the 6 or 7, or, excuse my imprecision, each vie with one another to claim it, what could they be driven by the unconscious knowledge that there exists some other force outside our understanding that seeks it as well? I love these lines. So much awaits discovery in the geometry. So many truths lie in the intersections, the fractals. I refuse to leave the hunt for the sepulchre until I am proven right, until I gaze upon the pattern with my own eyes, and all truths are revealed before me. Yours in service, Firim the Devout. And that was part 4, but that's only some of it. This is before his exile. So now we go to his exile notes. Firim in Exile, Part 1. I also had to fix the wiki, because last night this was broken, and it said Firim in Exile Part 8, and was a dead link. It didn't go anywhere, so I had to make a fucking account so I could come in here and edit the fucking hyperlink so that it would actually take you to the right fucking page. You're welcome! Alright, I'm going back to the top. Here we go. Firim in Exile Part 1. As my exile begins, I cannot help but think back on the events that led to our arrival. They doubted me, mocked me, conspired to replace me. Yet, just as they unsheathed their blades of doubt and skulked forward to strike me down, it happened. The geometry revealed itself, the fractals aligned. At long last, I found the way to Zereth Mortis. No other mind could conceive the formulae required to succeed, portal after portal, tuned and retuned, stretching out and looping back upon themselves. No wonder so many before me had failed. It was hidden, literally woven into being, like, literally hard to find. The fools among our expedition rushed to plunder the land's mysteries and paid the price for their folly. Did I not insist that the first ones would not leave their secrets unguarded? The survivors learned their lesson and heeded my warnings. We found a safe foothold, a haven from which our work began, but our fragile harmony would not endure. The deeper we delved into the mysteries of Zereth Mortis, the more my colleagues became affected. Even Executor Alkreth, perhaps the most glory-driven of anyone in the expedition, began to regard the knowledge we gleaned as sacred. In time, Alara and the others perceived the great truth. We could not send word of our discoveries back to the Overseer. The secrets of the first ones were not to be plundered. Outsiders would only disrupt the crucial purpose of Zereth Mortis. And outsiders have disrupted it. The Titans. We shattered our portals. I blotted out my translocation equations, even from my own mind. Any temptation that might lead us back to the Outer Realms was forfeit. Our hearts sang as we renounced our cartel designations. From that day forth, I was simply Firim. And while I did not seek to profit from the progenitor's knowledge, I did want to understand it. That is where the schism began. Why had I been burdened by the company of minds so small? Even in a land of infinite wonder, the dullards who worked alongside me in Haven failed to appreciate the purpose that drove my thought and deed. I had to reach the sepulchre. It was blasphemy, they claimed. The mysteries there were too sacred, truths not to be approached or even pondered. They labeled me a heretic. When my back was turned, they sabotaged my research. Just as I neared the translation of a new cipher, Kreth would send some meddling pilgrim to interfere. Pretty sure he's talking about us. Our bitter feud stretched on and became irreconcilable. Finally, they declared me an apostate and banished me from Haven, the very foothold I had given them. Still, I bore this indignity in a manner befitting one of my intellect and resolve. In exile, I would outpace them all. And so I did. Though access to the sepulchre continued to elude me, I learned much by observing the Automa. Admittedly, I underestimated them at first. They seemed mere servitors, less capable of independent thought than even the muddle-minded attendants in Oribos. But like everything else in Zereth Mortis, they were part of a pattern. A geometry that shifted, expanding and contracting as demanded by the duty put before them. After all, this land is no museum. No library of obscurities. No. It is a workshop. A forge where afterlives are fashioned. When I detached my consciousness from the limitations of perception, I saw the grand architecture of the progenitors put into practice. Afterlives assembled according to the needs of the Arbiter's judgments. It was the Automa who carried out these duties, forging flora, fauna, and terrain, encasing them in orbs to be sent into the in-between like seeds, falling into fertile soil. Do you see? Do you understand, as I do? Everything about the Shadowlands, everything, is part of the pattern. A closed system in which nothing is lost. Even that which is seemingly destroyed is merely being reshaped for a new purpose. Purpose. Myopic though they are, perhaps the attendants understand some small measure of this mystery. This is so interesting. A closed system in which nothing is lost. Even that which is seemingly destroyed is merely being reshaped for a new purpose. Zereth Mortis apparently adheres to equivalent exchange. Firim in Exile, Part 5. I observed many types of Automa of varied sizes and shapes. Guardians, builders, collectors, and a more petite variety that seemed to revel in duties of upkeep and repair. Besides an unwavering devotion to their obligations, these Automa shared another notable trait: their language. This is where the fractals of language come in, chat. This is what I started stream with. They spoke not in words I could understand, but in tones and echoes. Know that I, Firim, am renowned for my linguistic skills. Though arrival in the Shadowlands imbues mortal souls with a knowledge of the words of death, many retain memories of the languages they used on their worlds. And what is language, if not a system of sounds and patterns? So yes, Of course, I had absorbed countless languages during my interviews of mortal souls. Thus, you will understand my confidence that the language of the Automa would pose little challenge. Never in my existence had I been so wrong. The language of the Automa was not merely words, no. It was part and parcel of the ciphers. The words themselves were keys to understanding the geometry, the fractals. There was so much waiting to be discovered, but it was when I encountered one of the rarest forms of Automa that my mind was truly opened. Automa were commonplace in Zereth Mortis, but not all types. One was exceedingly rare, like polished jewels among infinite grains of sand. The oracles. They sang songs to their kin, and so, at first, I thought they were unique only in appearance. But as I drew close to one to better observe its duties, something unexpected happened. I heard its voice. And yet, the term voice falls short. To be sure, I experienced the sensation of words being spoken in much the manner one does when conversing with a colleague. And yet, this was more. I felt the words as much as heard them. The thoughts entered my consciousness and conveyed their meaning to my entire being. What words did it offer? It spoke images, riddles, prophecies. And as they reverberated through my very core, I remembered my conversations with Eric II and the 1,000 truths they told me of. Then it struck me. The oracle spoke in both one truth and 1,000. Not as separate thoughts, but as one in the same instant. And if the oracles, entities left behind to oversee a workshop, could think in such terms, how much more complex must the minds of their makers be? Long have I scoffed at what I learned of titans, or the void lords, or demons of the nether. I held Death's pantheon in higher regard, but now I know that they are just as limited. Truth lies not in one direction or another, but in their intersection. The first ones had parceled out their gifts, but gave no child all of them. No wonder these offspring bickered with such incessant jealousy. Their very nature was one of denial. At this realization, I lost consciousness, for I had once again transcended into a new plane of thought. This line cracks me up. It just gets me. Just gets me. Part 7. Every new discovery in Zereth Mortis drew me back to the mysteries of the first ones. I sought to understand their nature. Yet, each time I believed I was nearing an answer, I found myself drifting further away. I considered again their design, pattern, lines and curves, arcs and angles, and turns. Oh, so many turns. I think it's talking about the turn of the wheel. Why does it sound like the way Azeroth speaks? Let me get there. Let me get there. The 6 forces that pointed toward a 7th, and yet denied it. For a long while, I considered this seeming contradiction no more than another variable, an unknown waiting to be solved. But the song of the oracle continued to reverberate in my consciousness. As I allowed my focus to soften, my grip on the tangible to loosen, the geometry took shape in my mind. It was both 6 and 7. The 6 were one, and the 7th the other. Did they desire union? The song seemed to say otherwise. Both were, yet only one could be. The melody shifted. I shuddered at the shape it took. This was not a variable to be solved. It was a solution awaiting its opportunity. The song must not be allowed to end. Do the first ones still sing it? Truly, I do not know. But if they do not, who will? Firim in Exile, Epilogue. Though the jailer has been defeated, and the Shadowlands made whole again, I find myself unable to celebrate these victories. For I have studied the inner workings of the sepulchre, seen the powers with which the jailer sought to remake reality, and these observations fill me with a fear that shakes the very core of my being. It is clear to me now that there must be a Zareth for each of the cosmic forces, and within them, an inner sanctum akin to the sepulchre. And if that is true, then these sanctums must be connected on some fundamental level, a connection that the jailer sought to exploit. What he began in the sepulchre was meant to cascade outward from one Zareth to the next, until all were dominated by his power. The heart of the Shadowlands acting as a doorway to the heart of each cosmic force in turn, one after another bound to his will. But if his scheme was thwarted, then why is my mind so ill at ease? Because I have seen how fragile the pattern is, how delicate the scales that keep the six forces in balance. And if the jailer, in his act of malevolence, left behind but the most imperceptible of cracks in that pattern, and I fear what is tiny now will only grow, until the balance itself is prone to be shattered by another force applying its relentless pressure. I pray that the first ones anticipated such an eventuality, that they would leave measures in place to preserve their grand design, unless their design was never meant to endure. And that is the possibility that haunts me. Dude. Dude. Is this referring to the Devourers? No, I really don't think so. The Devourers are blown way the fuck out of proportion. Seventh cosmic force is not Devourers. I fear that this... Let's go through this. What is this talking about? 6 and 7. The fuck does that mean? And yet the term voice falls short. There's another thing here. Let's go to Ever-Living Statuette. This one's real good. You guys are gonna like this. It is difficult to determine the statuette's age, but something about it feels older than you can imagine. There is no telling what events it must have witnessed over the eons. Rosweir has warned you not to trust any of its whispers. Whatever wisdom it seeks to share is surely wrapped in deceit. Toxic Toby, thanks for the sub. Yeah, of course it is wrapped in deceit, Lamau. Don't listen to the statue. While in the player's inventory, with the player in Korthia, the statuette whispers. A city of secrets, a history of lies. But actually, before we get into those quotes, I want to talk about the age of the statue. So this is when Illyria was being sent the, listen to this. This is Illyria and Turalyon on Argus. Illyria, at this point, is using Void power, and Turalyon's using Light power. Illyria forced her mind to see what had been reaching out to them. Deep down in the belly of Argus, there was a creature of astonishing power, imprisoned by the green, corrupting fires of Fel. No, Illyria whispered. This cannot be the Emerald Star. By the light, Turalyon breathed. It screamed again. The force of it made them tremble. Illyria could hear noises down in the canyon. Movement. Marching. Demons were beginning to stir. The Legion knows something is wrong, she warned. It fought against its bonds, and tremors rippled across the world. Unable to escape, it screamed again. But this time, it tried to communicate. Illyria felt as its raw emotion gave way to something else. Memories. It was sending her its entire lifetime in a single, uncontrolled burst. In that instant, while the corrupted fount of arcane might was upon her, her mind was transported elsewhere. This being was so much more powerful than the minion of the shadow had been. Then she had witnessed flashes of destiny. Now, she lived a history that surpassed the existence of the universe. Argus's memories are of a history that surpassed the existence of the universe. Argus is really old. It's difficult to determine the statuette's age, but something about it feels older than you can imagine. There is no telling what events it must have witnessed over the eons. A city of secrets, a history of lies. Korthia, city of secrets. An implication that the history of Korthia, the Shadowlands, and perhaps the cosmos at large is littered with lies and deception, as the Pantheon of Order has altered it for their benefit. Hidden from daylight, a sleeping flame rests atop the 6th tree, possibly underground or underwater. May also be hidden from daylight because it is literally on the sun where I believe the Emerald Dream exists, or just because it exists in the dream itself where there is no sun in the sky. Sleeping may imply hidden, in a state similar to death or in a state of waiting. 6th tree likely applies to world trees in their order of creation. Iluna here, Chaladrasil, Nordrasil, Andrasil, Teldrasil, and Amirdrasil being the 6th world tree. Perhaps this alludes to something I have not yet seen. Hope, betrayal, sacrifice. Faces change, the tale does not. Similar to the repeating cycles and stories which exist throughout the history of WoW. Characters who do similar things in similar circumstances with clearly drawn parallels to other characters and events. Malfurion, Illidan, Tyrande, and Aman'Thul, Sargeras, and Aenar, for example. Also, the repeating cycles of the Titans, Keepers, Aspects, etc. This is what Fractals is talking about. How many voices do you heed? How many are real? How many cosmic forces do you believe actually have beings of immense power guiding them? How many of those beings are real? And how many are part of an illusion? So many secrets, so little time left to share them. The end of the grand cosmic conflict, either by the success of the Pantheon of Order or by the champions of Azeroth, which draws very close. This has been reinforced by the returning explanations of future expansion events by Chris Metzen at BlizzCon 2023. Time is running out. The 7th covets what the 6th hold fast. The fulcrum wavers. All will be undone. So this is something I'm willing to change, based on what Firim has said about the forces, because I think that there's some different interpretations to the 6th and 7th cosmic forces. The 7th covets what the 6 hold fast. The fulcrum wavers. All will be undone. Most believe this to be a reference to a mysterious 7th cosmic force, and it may be. However, given the other quotes present, I believe this is referring to the 6 Titans and Sargeras. Aman'Thul, Norgannon, Aenar, Agramar, Golganath, and Khaz'goroth, the 6. Sargeras coveting, yearning to possess or have what the Pantheon of Order hold fast, tightly secure, which is Azeroth, who is likely the true possessor of the 7th cosmic force, creation. The fulcrum wavers, the point on which a lever rests or is supported and on which it pivots, is likely a reference to how Sargeras' sword has significantly impacted and damaged the imprisonment mechanisms of the Pantheon of Order, shifting the balance of the conflict for Azeroth, finally beginning to turn the tides of the war. Keep in mind that this would not have occurred had Illidan not used the Sargerite keystone to bridge Azeroth to Argus. All will be undone is a direct reference to the end of all things, brought by Argus and Sargeras' intent to quite literally undo the prison mechanisms keeping Azeroth in stasis, sedated, and unable to awaken. Sargeras was a being of order that was of disorder that was ordered. In your opinion, I think he's the Lord of Chaos. I agree. Talking about the 7 forces, one of them could be balance. The 7th force, we are very, and by we I mean me and some of the people I love to speculate with most closely, are considering the possibility that the force that does not belong is order. It's a force that is artificial and seeks to exert its influence upon all things in creation, regardless of what is natural. Order is seemingly one of the most unnaturally represented things on the chart. Now, that's not to say that order itself cannot be a cosmic force, but it should not be represented by the idea of control and division. That's not correct. Domination, that type of stuff, not a good look. Who created it then? The Titans. They are an unnatural force of order. If that's true, then shouldn't disorder not exist? I would actually agree that to in a sense that is actually the case too. But what I'm trying to say is that the cosmic force, which is maliciously trying to take over everything else, is order. It's trying to bring order. It's trying to bring an artificial structure to something that already has natural structure in and of itself. Even order's art is artifice, buildings, etc. Order is the other force. Here's what I'm about to tell you. There's another word that someone can use for order. And it's used in Firim's writings. Not control. Robixon. Balance. The true force of order is not division. It's balance. That's how you find true order. Elune is the key to it. And as a potential direct daughter of Azeroth, creation made of all forces, one of the greatest questions that we've been asking is, what is Elune? So Titans came and said, fuck balance, let's order shit. Why though? That is the question. Why are they acting frankly out of order? Why are they doing this? The 7th, and that's why another one of the interpretations to this is that the 7th covets what the 6th hold fast. The 7th force being order, and the other 6 forces in truth being ones bound to it. Again, this is like Firim's writings, the first iteration. It's always going to be the first iteration. This will change. It's not a guarantee. It's not a possibility that it will change. It is a guarantee that it will. Division is not the way that the universe is supposed to work. Order does not occur in nature. Natural order is a philosophy the human mind applies to nature to make sense of it. Natural order is a lie. The only thing that, well, that's not true. There is a natural order. There is a natural form of order, just as life is a natural form of chaos. But this just goes to show why each individual cosmic force does not necessarily have to exist independent of one another. The idea, the very denial rooted in them and the conflict at large is that they are for some reason at odds. Say it with me, guys. Being right isn't what really matters. The thought matters. Yes. The thing is that what do the Titans do with their magic? They divide, they control, right? That's what they do. Okay? What does the Legion do? They assimilate and they convert, they spread. They bring things together. They don't divide them apart. So keep that in mind. It's like the Borg, kind of, yeah. Now, keep in mind, Firim suggests the possibility that the seventh force is a fractal born from the others. What I'm trying to say, regardless of whether or not what I'm saying to you right here is correct, what I'm trying to say is that Firim's writings are meant to bring into question the legitimacy of each cosmic force, and have you ponder what differentiates them from one another and why they are at odds. And the word balance is used several times by Firim. You know what I used to say about Destiny? The game? Destiny 2 is balanced because of how unbalanced it is. Through chaos comes balance naturally, and through death comes order to life. The light has struck a bargain with the enemy of all. The enemy of all is the Titans. There's so much work to be done, and I can't even describe to you all of my own ideas for how the fuck this is supposed to work.